Good morning everyone and Assalamualaikum. Today we are going to discuss about the challenges that most of the international student faces. And I believe one of them is going to be feeling homesick. It's actually a normal reaction for the international students due to the major life changes in their life. And my reason for that is because of the cultural and environmental shock. Being abroad means you are going to faces with a lot of unfamiliar things, and one of them is actually food. Since we all know that food is actually one of our comfort places, whenever we are sad, mad, we are going to eat. So, if the food that they have there doesn't suit with their liking taste, this eventually will make them miss their homemade, or I say homemade food much more. Or I'll say the traditional ingredients that they actually have back in their home now. Moving on to my next point is going to be a lack of support system. I'm not talking about not receiving any love, but it's actually being long distance from their loved ones, or I'll say from their parents. And it is sad. I think it's because they can express their feeling too much and they have to swallow that feeling, since it's hard for them to make a phone call to express it due to the different time zone, and don't want to interrupt their parents a lot. And I think my last reason is going to be the academic pressure. Different countries may have different learning and teaching style, or maybe different grading system. And facing with this, a lot of changes in their life can actually cause pressure and stress for the international students in such a short period. What I want to say is that feeling homesick is actually challenges that all of the international student faces, and one of the biggest challenges here.
While I do agree that the feeling of homesickness is a big challenge for many international students, I don't agree that it is the biggest challenge, because in my opinion, the biggest challenge that international students face when studying abroad is actually the language barrier they experience. In my opinion, the language barrier becomes a big problem for many students when studying abroad, because it causes the students to find it harder to communicate with their peers and other students. This can ultimately cause the students to be unable to properly form friendships and bonds amongst the students themselves. And this can actually cause the students to feel very lonely, which can very severely affect the students' mental health. And secondly, the language barrier can actually require students to properly have to learn a new language, which can actually take up a lot of the students' time, but they may not have enough free time to properly learn the language, because they'll probably be busy with other academic preparations and extracurricular activities. And lastly, I think the language barrier becomes a big challenge for many international students because it causes difficulty in understanding learning materials. When studying abroad, the learning materials are most likely standardized into one language throughout the entire syllabus. So if the students are unable to properly understand that language, it can cause severe difficulty in understanding the learning content and, for example, the slides and the lecture notes that are given to the students themselves.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I actually don't quite agree with you, because I'm very sure that the students most of the students that choose to study abroad already prepared a lot for their study. And of course, they are going to choose the country that they already mastered, or I say intermediate in the language over there. And talking about the learning materials, I know it's actually hard, but they do have a friend that's actually going to help with the language or with the study materials. And nowadays, we also have AI. We say AI. So I think it's going to be easier for them to actually learn a new language for them. Do you agree with me?
I'm sorry, I have to disagree with you. Although some students did some preparations by learning a language of a country that they are going to study in, but some students are slow in learning. And they also lack experience with talking with native speakers. Moving on, in my opinion, one of the challenges that students who studies abroad might face is financial problems. As we know, studying abroad can cost a lot of money, and although some students did receive some scholarships to cover their academic expenses, but then again, financial problems still can happen due to many factors. One of the reasons is because of the high cost of living, especially in major cities. The reason is because the rent is high and students have to share their dormitory or rooms with another students so that they can split their rent. Second, students also lack access to financial aids. International students are not eligible to receive free medical support of the country from the country that they are studying in. So they might have to spend extra money on consultations and also medications. Last but not least, international students also face with financial pressure from their families. The reason is because they are students who rely entirely to their families to cover up their accommodation fees and also tuition fees.
I agree with your point that the financial problems that students face can be a big problem. I'd also like to add that the financial problems can be serious for many students because of the currency exchange between their home country and the country that they are studying in. For example, the currency rate exchange between Malaysian ringgit and US dollars, the currency rate exchange can be very high in the country that they are studying in compared to their homeland currency, which can cause a lot of problems when they are trying to save up money to study in that country.
I agree with you, which is a financial problem is one of the challenges that international students need to face. However, in my opinion, I think cultural differences is the biggest challenges that students need to face when studying abroad. So moving to a new country means changing your whole lifetime. So if students cannot adapt to this situation and changes, this can disrupt their focus on their study life. So first of all, every student cultural differences is the biggest problem because students might move to a place where people surrounding them prefer privacy. So if student cannot adapt to this situation, student will be not focused in their study life. So as an example, student might move to a place where people surrounding them prefer privacy and keep to themselves. So if student cannot adapt to this situation, they will feel lonely and left out. So next, furthermore, cultural differences. Furthermore, cultural differences. Education system is the challenges that students need to face. For instance, student every country has their own education system. So our student used to a system where they just listen quietly to their lecturers and respect to them. However, in their new country, lecturers might expect them to speak up and share some opinions. So because of our student is trying to be so polite according to our own culture, they will stay quiet. So as a result, students will lose their important participation marks and it will make them fail in their exam. That's all from me.
I actually agree with you guys, and since all of you already pointed out you guys' point, but I still choose to believe and stick to my point that actually feeling homesick is their biggest challenge set, because this feeling is not only faced by the international students, but even the local students face the same thing. So this feeling is actually something to ignore, because if they keep it for themselves for too long, it's actually going to disturb their lifestyle.
I agree that the feeling of homesickness is actually one of the biggest problems that students may face when studying abroad, because without periodical visits back home, the students may face long-term loneliness, and this can actually really severely affect a student's mental health and can have permanent effects on a student's lifestyle.
I agree with both of you. Feeling homesickness can make the students feel lonely and also isolated. Some students also experience prejudice from the locals there, and that can also cause them to have low self-esteem.
So I agree with all of you. Feeling homesickness is the biggest challenges that students need to face. Studying abroad separates students with their family and new friends, with their family and friends. So, but students still have a time to adapt to these changes. So that's all.
So that's all from us. Thank you.
Thank you.